Today we are discussing a very, very hot but very important topic on mandatory vaccinations. So I have a wonderful panel here of speakers who are going to unpack, this topic and tell us more about it. And as you all know, that when COVID hit in 2020, a lot of things changed in the way we work and how companies conduct business. And as a result of the pandemic and the negative impact it has had, a number of companies have opted to implement mandatory vaccinations as a safety measure. So to unpack this topic for us, I have with me Dr. Noluthando Nematserani, who is the head of the Center for Clinical Excellence and Discovery, Johan, McKenzie's head of employment practice, and Gerhard Papenfus, who is the chief executive of the National Employers Association of South Africa. I'm going to encourage you guys to please send your questions on the everyone to the everyone section, chat section. So to kick us off, I am going to start with you, Steve. How are you?
Very well, thanks. Welcome to everyone.
Okay, cool. Please, a number of people know that Discovery is one of the companies that implemented mandatory vaccination. Can you just please tell us how did that come about? What influenced that decision?
Sure. So if we there were really sort of 6 key elements that really took us to this decision, but I wanted, maybe the first one was, we must remember when it happened. At the time, we were in the middle of a really tragic third wave with Delta hitting us, and if we all have to cast our minds back to that time, it was a really tragic time for so many of us. Both in the impact on business, but equally the impact on lives. So that was a reality we had to take into account at the time. The other one was there was an individual health imperative there was unequivocal evidence that that vaccines work, and I think that was obviously being very, very strongly put out across the globe. But we had both data internally of our own customers and clients, but equally we had done the studies with several other government organizations, and both local and abroad, and there was unequivocal evidence. So that vaccines work. So that was the other one. Then there was this public health imperative, and that was that our hospitals getting constrained, impact on resources, doctors, and caregivers was just immense, and was causing a lot of challenges to the health system. So we felt we had to act on that, and then we had an obstacle. I think this is something we just need to pause on. Is that while we had all these other things that I'm talking about, many people weren't vaccinating at that stage. The rate was very low in South Africa, and in our own business, it was also sat at about 28% or something like that. So we had this hesitancy to vaccinate, which we had to overcome, and I can talk a little bit about that later if you want. And then we had this sort of moral and social obligation. Discovery's got a purpose which is very clear, and we inject it into everything we do. We have to enhance and protect the lives of everyone, and that extended to our own employees. And, very sadly, we had lost 22 colleagues at this stage to COVID. But if you extend that to families and parents and loved ones, it was quite a big personal issue for Discovery to overcome. But equally, we had lost a huge amount of our own members as well. So we had a social and moral obligation to act. And then we had this underlying legal obligation, which is about safeguarding all employees from all potential risks, and I'm sure Johan can touch on that. this was something which we took into account and got in lots of counsel on. So those were the drivers behind what we did. But fundamentally, we also felt this was the right thing to do. As the role we play in South Africa as Discovery, we needed to take a lead very public lead on declaring mandatory vaccinations, because we felt that would also encourage many other organizations to take a bold step at the time, which, if you remember, was a massively unknown thing whether you could or couldn't do this. But the directive gave us an opportunity, and we, together with many stakeholders, BLSA, Leadership South Africa, obviously, was around the country. We had lots of discussions, and then we felt this was something which Discovery had to do, and we announced that at our annual interim results in September last year. So I don't know if that gives you some background. Maybe are there any other sort of follow-up questions you wanted to ask? I think we've lost Luby again.
I'm not sure if Shlubi, if you can hear us. Otherwise, I'm happy to just pick up where Stephen has left off, and just for the sake of keeping the discussion going. I mean, we certainly, from a legal practice perspective, when Discovery announced last, I think it was August or so, that listen, this is the time, and you're going to mandate vaccination. That we were of the view that we will see a whole groundswell of other companies following suit, and there's been a number of organizations. I know when we last checked, it was about in March this year, there were at least 18 other large organizations that did follow suit, and implemented some version of mandatory vaccination as well. So it's interesting to hear, Stephen, from you that the thought process and the thinking that went into it, and it's difficult to fault that. It's difficult to fault that, considering where we were as a country and the low rate of vaccination. So very interesting to hear that from you.
Yeah. So maybe I can just give you some indication of where we started. We were around the high 20s when we started the mandate, and we now sit at 98% vaccinated. The sort of last 2% could be a range of reasons why somebody's not vaccinated from, but all would be legitimate process that was carried out to register the objections that were people had to be vaccinated. Some would be clinical, some would be based on belief systems and cultural issues. But that was a hugely extensive process that we went through within independent committees. But perhaps maybe also just to comment that the response we had from the sort of the market around and stakeholders for us, we had typically our employees were we ran the surveys, they were typically supportive of the idea. I guess the one thing if we're honest, there was this underlying issue around making anything mandatory can kind of strike some kind of fear into employees about, okay, this one we understand, but what next are you going to make mandatory? And then our clients were supportive generally. Actually, majority were generally health professionals, very, very supportive. Government was obviously on our side on this one. Our suppliers have all been supportive. And the media was obviously very supportive as well. So it kind of landed okay. I suppose the one thing that was, always unknown was how that legal framework would unravel as we went on. What do some of these things mean? And the multiple changes in that framework that emerged. So, Johan, I don't know if you can reflect on the journey that kind of played out and where we are now would be amazing to hear.
No, with the greatest pleasure. I mean, we followed with great interest, what was happening at Discovery and the leading role that the organization took in dealing with the issue. And this is probably the metaphor for COVID. We're all building this plane as we're flying it. So we were desperate to try and see how this will play out in the judiciary. And we took a lot of comfort from the very early rulings and awards that were handed down by the CCMA. There's been 1 or 2 labor court cases dealing with the issue as well. And by and large, the judiciary seems to be seeing the world in a similar way that we are, namely that the legal framework allows for an employer to make that choice as to whether it's mandatory within the workplace, and subject to various checks and balances, to actually mandate vaccination in the workplace. Our experience, as practitioners, and bulk of our clients are global organizations, multinationals, who have a presence in South Africa and the rest of the continent. The majority of clients adopted a position of, not mandating it, but following suit with either what's happening in the industry or whether it's a legal requirement in country. So we did not see, what I thought was going to be this groundswell of organizations who were also going to mandate vaccinations. What we did see was a number of organizations made a test an entry requirement into premises. And that seems to be where a number of companies have landed as a middle ground option, to strongly encourage people to get vaccinated without mandating it. So on the one side of the spectrum, we've got companies who mandated vaccination. Then we've got a group in the middle who, encourage people strongly to be vaccinated, where you either need a vaccination certificate or a negative test in order to enter the premises. And then there's various degrees of whether employers forced people to come back to work. And then the other side of the spectrum, we've got clients who just say, listen, we're not going to intervene, and we're going to do all sorts of other measures in order to create a safe working environment, but we're not going to mandate vaccination. And which is right. I don't think it's fair to say that any one of those is an absolute. I think it's really dependent on the industry that you're in, the organization, the overriding role that you play as a corporate citizen within our society. There are so many factors that impact on whether it's the right and appropriate decision for you as a business to take. I personally applaud Discovery for taking that step, especially at the time, because as a citizen, our vaccination rate was so ridiculously low. We desperately needed some other intervention in order to get more people vaccinated. But that's me. From a legal perspective, we are still seeing employees that are going through the dispute resolution system where their services have been terminated for not being vaccinated, and we haven't seen real evidence of a change in attitude by either the Employment Tribunal, the CCMA, or the Labour Court, where with the negative effect of COVID seemingly wearing off, and I'm no medical expert, that there's a change in the attitude of the judiciary as to how employers should be dealing with this.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be great to hear from Nolu, who's been at the forefront of this. I just want to make the point that Nolu was both incredibly useful to us as the expert in guiding people with concerns through that process, but I think the $1 million question we want to know is, what does the future look like, Nolu?
I think, Steve, before I even go there, I wanted to just highlight the importance of just the mandate from our side, the mandatory vaccination policy. We were in a very difficult time at that time. It was really, there was lots of hesitance. I think if we had not mandated, COVID vaccines, we would have, gotten very slow traction from our employee base. And I think what happened because of that mandatory vaccination policy, even though, we were going to implement it 1st Jan 2022, but it really opened up avenues for us to start engaging extensively with our staff. And I think you'll remember the webinars that we drove with staff, and also the one-on-one discussions, because people then needed information to actually make informed decisions around, their health, and also what the vaccination meant for them. And I think for us, if we had not gone that route, people would have stayed at home, maybe, still continued to be hesitant and consumed what was very much in the public domain, a lot of myths around vaccines, a lot of misinformation that was circulating. But because there was this process that was initiated by business, people then sought, credible sources of information. They came forward and we engaged extensively. We gave time to make sure that we answered their questions, and they felt that they were well informed. And I think through that process, Steve, you saw how quickly our numbers, climbed. And it was really just people. And some of them, they came and said, you know what, we didn't know what we didn't know. And we were, relying on social media at times to influence our thinking. But because as a company, we dedicated time. So it was not only webinars, we also had a COVID vaccine hub where, at your own leisure as a staff member, you could go and, get information that is well researched and coming from credible sources. So I think, oh, sorry, Shubi, you can come.
No, it's fine. You can continue. Sorry, I thought you were done.
So I think, Steve really positioned the timing of the mandatory vaccination policy announcement very well. It was it was in August. We had just gone through the most devastating Delta wave, losing some of our colleagues. And we didn't know what the future looked like, but what we knew was that at some point we needed to get back to the office. There were plans for us to come back to the office, and we wanted a safe environment for our employees. And we wanted to make sure that we contribute meaningfully, from a public health point of view, with the understanding that with each intervention that was put in place, we complied. When it was about sanitizing, we made sure that our staff members had access to sanitizers. When it was about time to mandate mask wearing in the offices, we followed suit. And for us, it was really just an additional step in protecting our staff by making sure that they are vaccinated, protecting themselves and also protecting those staff members who would be coming back to the office with them.
I'm not sure if you touched on this, but can you tell us how many people have now been vaccinated at Discovery?
Yeah, Steve has already mentioned that at the start we were just in the 20%, around 20 to 28%, and then now we are sitting at 98% vaccinated. And the 2% that are not vaccinated, there was a process that was followed. So there was an objections process that was followed. People needed to submit their motivations, and there was a range of objections that it was medical reasons, religious reasons, and cultural reasons. And we had a very well-structured approach where we had independent experts from the medical field, from the legal field, to actually assist with reviewing those objections. And then following that process, then we could reasonably accommodate them within the office space.
Okay. All right, cool. Thanks, Nolu. I know Gerhard has a very different opinion when it comes to mandatory vaccinations. Gerhard, do you want to share with us what your thoughts are and why you are against mandatory vaccinations?
Yeah, thank you, Louis. When I was sitting here and listened to the last few minutes, what's been said, and I realize I'm from an entirely different world. The world in corporates is a different world. In my world, we do not allow people to subject us to these things. And I advise thousands of companies in NEASA, thousands, and I've advised him against it from the outset on various grounds. But I just want to deal, and I have the privilege to react on some of the things that's been said. Steve said, that it was a tragic when this happened, and then he refers to the evidence that the vaccines work. Now, I don't know where, sorry, Steve, we're not here for a fight. I don't know where you get that evidence from, because Pfizer says itself. I read here in a document, the Pfizer report to the Securities and Exchange Commission of May, and Pfizer says, we may not be able to demonstrate sufficient efficacy or safety of COVID vaccines. What they say is they might scrap the project because it's not safe. the injuries, vaccine injuries, are totally denied and suppressed. And I know that. I know people that's been affected, and I have the statistical evidence. VS tell us, and it's underreported. So I don't know where people come and say it's safe. I want to ask why, when there was a crisis, why has government never told people what to do in terms of early treatment? I've had COVID. I'm not injected. I will never do that. I sit here with natural immunity, which is denied that it actually, that it's good, it's superior. Natural immunity is superior because that's my God-given ability in my body. And somebody tells me this thing works. It doesn't, because why do you need boosters? We were told to get one vaccine and it's over. It is not. You will get boosters for the rest of your life. And we know that it impacts negatively on your immune system. We see that more people currently get sick in Omicron and this fifth wave, which is a zero event actually. Those that's vaccinated get sick. In the last months, I personally, went to people and helped them. I'm not a doctor. I'm talking about friends that were struggling with oxygen shortages. And I went to them to assist them. Going in without a mask, just go in, help the person. Why? Because I'm not scared. I'm not scared. Here in my organization, almost nobody is vaccinated and nobody is sick. So when we talk about safety, I can't see where you get that from. You know, and I'm very concerned when I hear that you had 20% vaccinated, now it's 98%. And I, at an organization assisting business, created a help desk for employees who had problems because the trade unions were dead out in the situation. And I can just tell you, we had complaints from people who Discovery said, please help us. So I'm not going to go into that, but you know, and you're welcome, Steve, to come and visit us, and I'll tell you what has happened there. And to force people, and many of them against their will, and I know that, to force them against their will, and you say it's immoral, and you say you've got a moral obligation to society, I disagree with that. That is not a moral obligation. To tell a person you must get vaccinated or lose your job, or intimidate them in front of panels, I do not agree with that. So you say you follow government support. Man, I will not follow government's lead. I will not follow this government's lead in anything. This government is buggering up each and everything they touch. And to say that in respect of this issue, we follow their advice. I will not follow government's advice in any respect. What I do is I pay tax to them. And they are a failing government, and they failed the nation in this respect. They bankrupted us, not the virus bankrupted this nation. That was never necessary. And you talk about media support. You know, the media support is a big issue. The media, and I don't know whether they get paid for it or what it is, but there's no journalism left in this. They follow a particular narrative. And anyone going against it is simply cancelled, harassed, intimidated. So, you know, I'm very concerned of what's happening. Our freedom is tremendously curtailed, and freedom is, for me, is very important. Very, very important. So what we're challenging, we're in court with this. I just want to say that these CCMA rulings are rubbish, and I say that is rubbish. These commissioners didn't have the guts to make proper decisions, and the cases from them, before them was not properly presented. But CCMA rulings has no precedent, and many lawyers say they can't even write about it. It's such rubbish that you can't write about it. You cannot give any opinion on this. So our case is going to the High Court, and if we fail, we'll go to the Constitutional Court, and this will be the first proper challenge in this respect. What is our challenge about? First of all, it is constitutional, and I'm saying that the constitutional provisions in terms of individual rights is is breached in each and every respect. Each and every respect. I just want to read something to you that, in respect of that, the Bill of Rights make provision for inherent dignity and the right to have dignity respected. Now, this is at the root of this thing. To tell a person you have to get this injection, and I refer to this as an injection because it's not a vaccine, it is still in experimental phase. And if you say, why do I say that? Then I say to you that Pfizer's boss, CEO, in last month says, this means we will know whether our vaccine is effective by the end of October this year. They don't know it as yet. They've rushed this thing through. They almost broke all the rules. And South Africa did not do any independent study in its own. South Africans followed what the Americans and the FDA told them. Why do I know that? I'm in court with SAPRA also. And I'm asking them, give us the information, give us the evidence. They can't, because they don't have it. And if they have it, why don't they give it to us? They followed what the Americans did, and I think this is going to be a big train smash eventually. So the right to dignity, the right of privacy, you must disclose whether you are vaccinated. Well, why must you not disclose if you have AIDS, HIV positive, or TB? Why are you required to disclose that? Because of the intimidation. This we challenge. Bodily integrity. This is a trial vaccine. We don't know how good it is. The long-term effect of this thing. I have a friend, a healthy guy, he's in his 60s. He said it to me a few days ago. He's a very prominent person in South Africa, and he said to me, Gerhard, since I have this thing, my health is deteriorated. Now, this is just one example. I can call many. Freedom of trade and occupation. Sorry, madam. So, freedom of trade, it's freedom of trade and association. You can't work here unless you're vaccinated. Freedom of conscience, freedom, and then secondly, let me just deal with the last one, the OHS.
Okay, Gerhard, I'm going to, sorry, man, I'm going to give you, I'll give you an opportunity to continue, but can I just open the floor? I see Noluthando has had a hand up. Can I just allow her to respond?
Well, let me just deal with the Occupational Health and Safety Act, and then I'm done. The occupational health.
Quickly, please.
Yes. Let me tell you, I've had experiences. I've sat here and listened to people for half an hour, and that's fine. But because you don't hear what you hear what you don't want to hear, you tell me to be finished. If you do that, I'll just leave this thing. I'm leaving it. I've got other stuff to do. The Occupational Health and Safety Act does not empower the minister of an employer to breach the constitutional rights of somebody else. Can you imagine that an employer, an unscrupulous employer, say to an employee, I, a citizen of South Africa, give you an instruction that breach your constitutional rights. An individual, a citizen, breaching the constitutional rights of another citizen. Well, I can go on and on about this. But all I'm saying, I am shocked. No, I'm not shocked. I know what Discovery's position on this was. Our freedom is in the process of being deteriorated, taken away from us. This is just the beginning. I heard people saying we've got an interesting future where a pass will determine where you can enter and where you know. That's not a future I want. The softies, if they think, I'm not scared of a virus. I can look after myself. You don't have to look after me. I can do it myself. And if you're overweight and if you're old, well, protect yourself. A healthy person don't need an injection into their body. So that's my story. I don't think you'll come back to me, but anyway.
I will definitely come back to you. Thank you so much, Gerhard.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you. I've got to leave.
I'll come back to you. I've got to leave.
Sorry, I've got to leave at 11 sharp. Is that good?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
That's
thank
fine.
you, ma'am. Thank you. Bye.
No problem. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Gerhard. You know, we sat with people like you right at the start of our mandatory vaccination policy process. And I think for me, I'm really pleased that, you know, I'm here today and I can share with you the truths about the science behind vaccinations, because I think there are 2 points that you're making. There's the legal side, but I think on the science, I need to almost intervene and really share the right science with everyone. Vaccinations or vaccines are not new. We vaccinate our kids, and most of us were vaccinated here. And it's mandated that all kids who are born in South Africa must be vaccinated.
Madam, please don't lecture me on vaccines. This is not a vaccine. I'm vaccinated myself. I'm okay with that.
No, but you're saying the vaccines don't work. No, it's not an experiment. So let's go through the science.
Madam, I've just read to you what the Pfizer's boss said. No. I'm not a child. Pfizer's boss says we don't know whether it's safe.
Please allow Noluthando to speak, then you can respond later.
But speak to there is no science for this, please.
Please allow her to
there is science.
Her insights, please.
There is science. So I'm going to go back and say vaccines have been there. From childhood, we are all vaccinated. And if you think about it, how many boosters do kids get? When you are born, you get your BCG. Then at 6 weeks, you get your vaccines. 10 weeks, 14 weeks, you still boost. The reason why you boost is because as the vaccine mutates, it changes form, and therefore you need to keep up and make sure you bolster the immune system. There are some infections where you do not get the mutations, and therefore you can give one injection and then you can be able to get lifelong immunity. And I think at the start of COVID, we didn't think that it was going to mutate as it did. And as it continued to mutate, we needed to respond as a science, from a scientific point of view. So I think for me, it's important that we do not mislead people and say vaccines don't work and say all those things, because there's a registration process that, is required for any medication to be administered. And you rely on clinical studies. And South Africa actually participated in those clinical studies. The J&J trials were, we contributed to that clinical data. For AstraZeneca, our people contributed to that data. For the Novavax vaccine, our people contributed to that vaccine. We actually have another study that was initiated in South Africa for the other vaccine, the CoronaVac. So I'm just saying, it's not like we are taking information from elsewhere. We also were part of those clinical studies. The second thing is that infection-induced immunity is well accepted. It is there and it happens, but we also know the variability. Not everyone who has had COVID has robust immunity, but a significant amount of people actually do have good solid immunity. The other thing is, we didn't know about long COVID at the start of the pandemic. We know that once you get the infection, you can actually have long-term effects of COVID. People are living with that, and we know. The second thing, we've heard about a lot of people who have had other, unrelated conditions, but because they were vaccinated, everything that they had now is related to the vaccine. I'm going to give you one last example, and then I'll stop, because I also don't want to hog the platform. There's a particular doctor who was due to have their COVID vaccine just before, right at the beginning, and just before they could have their vaccine, they had a massive clot, a pulmonary embolus in their heart, just a few days before they had the vaccine. I can tell you now, if that person had the vaccine and developed that event, it was going to be 100%, attributed to the vaccine. We've seen a lot of other people who have had other non-related issues, but because they have had the vaccine, everything that they have now is linked to the vaccine. And there are various platforms where people, misinterpret data that is out there. And I think, Gerhard, for me, I'm happy to engage you outside of this platform, because I think we need to be, arguing from a point of knowing the science, understanding the science, and making sure that whatever we reference, the sources that we reference, are credible.
Thanks, Nolu. Johan, can I come to you? I don't know if you've touched on.
Maybe I'm not sure if it's just me, but it is cut out. Happy to just share a couple of thoughts. If you can hear me. So sorry, man. I'm not sure if you can hear me, but I'm happy to speak on a couple of the issues.
Do you can you tell us if you know a number of? Okay, hi. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So I just wanted you to chat to us about the trends that you've been seeing in the past few months when it comes to mandatory vaccinations in the workplace. Are we seeing a lot of companies following Discovery or Mutual and other companies that have are mandating vaccinations or have mandated vaccinations?
Sure.
What have you seen happening? Yeah.
Sure. I mean, we touched on it briefly earlier on, so I don't want to repeat what we've said already, and I'm conscious of time. But just to share a bit again, generally speaking, there's a group of employers that have mandated vaccinations. We've seen a number of them following Discovery's lead. We've got another group of employers who requires either a vaccination certificate or proof of a negative COVID test as an entry requirement into the workplace. I mean, and contrary to what has been posted and said, there is at least one Labour Court reported decision already on exactly that point, where the Labour Court, not the CCMA, the Labour Court, which is judgment does create legal precedent for us, where the Labour Court has said that it's acceptable for an employer to dismiss an employee who refuses to be tested under circumstances where there is a testing requirement for access to the workplace. So I really appreciate Gerhard's passion on the matter, and I wish we could bottle that and use it for all sorts of other purposes. But the passion without the science and the law is dangerous on its own. The legal position is, in my mind, is clear. The judiciary is favouring the approach that is permitted in the legislation, and until Gerhard's team is successful in challenging the underlying validity of the law, I mean, more employees are going to get dismissed, and this is my fundamental concern with this approach. It's all wonderful for us to get passionate about how our rights as citizens should be respected and revered. Appreciating that no right in the Bill of Rights is absolute. The very same Bill of Rights, the Constitution itself, clearly states that any right within the Bill of Rights can be limited. It's a matter of balancing rights and balancing conflicting interests here. And the concern is that many more employees following that line of argument are going to get dismissed. I see this. I deal with this. I deal with clients whose employees have been dismissed and that are going to the CCMA and are being found, and their dismissals are found to be unfair. So I find it's irresponsible gambling with people's jobs. When the advice that they get is that you don't need to follow this law because the law is unjust. I mean, that's just not right. So that's my view on the matter. I appreciate that others have different views on this, but I come from a position where I apply the law on the issue. And this is where the law is at the moment. The law is not favouring Gerhard's approach.
I want to respond to that, please.
Okay.
I want to respond to that.
Yes.
Johan, I'm advising business. I'm not advising employees. I am advising business not to follow government's approach on this. Because the science does not favour you. I cannot see why you want to vaccinate a person. Sorry for using the word vaccinate. It's not a vaccine. Why do you advise an employee to get vaccinated or force that employee to be vaccinated if an employee that's vaccinated can transmit the virus and get infected and can die? Why do you want to do that? And secondly, constitutional rights can be limited, but in specific circumstances. For instance, the Employment Equity Act says you cannot discriminate. The Constitution says you cannot discriminate against a person on the basis of color, for instance. Then the Employment Equity Act of Parliament says you can, in respect of transformation. That's specific. There is no specific law that says you can discriminate on a person on the basis of this. It's not in the OHA. So I differ from you, and I am prepared to engage with you in a debate on the issue on the legal side. So the labour courts issue, we know to what extent the judiciary has been influenced by this narrative. But anyway, we'll go to the Constitutional Court. We're on our way there. So, and the fact is, I just want to, the doctor had said, misinterpretation of science. You know, we listen to other scientists, and they're not stupid scientists. They're scientists and virologists. Many of them, thousands of them, says don't touch this thing on the health basis. So I just want to say that's your narrative, and I think the guys that's following this narrative, two things. They decide to ignore the science on the issue because you can't undo what you've already done to your body. So sorry for you guys. This thing might turn out not too well for you.
Thanks, Gerhard. Okay, Johan, your last.
I want to actually leave it with the scientists because I think, neither Gerhard nor I are medical professionals or scientists, so I mean, we're going to be speculating the whole day and have some interesting debates about it. I can comfortably speak about the law, which is my field of expertise. I mean, and on the law, it's not correct. The employment equity itself allows for fair discrimination on the basis of an inherent job requirement. So the employer's inherent job requirement is that...
That's exactly what I said.
Please, okay, Gerhard, allow Johan to
but you know what,
speak,
don't listen
we
to
are
what
running
I say,
out of time.
Okay,
we are running out of time. Okay, yes, Johan, please go ahead.
So Gerhard raised the example of employment equity and affirmative action as a fair way of differentiating, which is of course 100% correct. What he said was that there's no law that allows for it, and that's not true, because I mean the very same act, as a matter of fact, the very next subsection also allows for fair discrimination on the basis of an inherent job requirement. This is what employers are relying on. They're saying that, listen, if you need to come into my workplace, within my workplace, having done a risk assessment, we have now decided that we're going to mandate vaccination. And it's thus an inherent requirement of your role that you must be vaccinated or if you want to work there. But I would much rather hear from Dr. Noluthando here, to deal with the medical issues, because I think that is where we are worlds apart.
Johan, I think it's been hard. It's been very difficult to argue with top epidemiologists and virologists, and I think for me, if you have seen also the list of 1,000 of people, but if you go into their credentials, it tells a different story. So I think for me, before we say people are credible scientists, we need to just make sure that we know what their credentials are. And what qualification and experience. I mean, you can say it's nonsense, but I have a lot of time.
Then I judge your credentials. Then how can you do that?
MBCHB, MPharmEd, Master.
Madam, I can give you hundreds of people with the same qualifications, and you say that this is nonsense.
Have you verified their qualifications?
I'm putting an invitation to you.
Okay, I'm sorry to do this, but I think we've come to the end of our session.
Thank you, but this is an invitation to the doctor. I want to have her in a public debate. This is a public invitation.
I'm very happy. Did you use ivermectin, Gerhard?
Amongst others.
Exactly. I thought as much.
What do you mean?
Okay. Thank you so much.
But no backing science.
Madam, you are.
I rest my case. Gerhard.
You are totally misinformed.
If you use ivermectin, I am very much informed.
Madam, I've used other stuff as well. Why do you think I say I'm 64 years old?
You trust a drug that has got no backing evidence in the use of COVID.
Madam, you are shockingly misinformed.
But
you
are
so much
informed. You used it. You said.
Okay, we've come to the end of the session. Thank you so much. I did warn you that this is a very hot topic, as you can see. Yeah, but unfortunately, we've run out of time. Thank you so much to everyone who's joined us this morning, and thanks to our wonderful panel of experts for their fantastic insights. We're now crossing over to the studio where Chris Forrest is waiting with our partners from Workday, Zillow, Vodacom